Hello and thank you for your company. The Turkish government has called for an immediate end to demonstrations in Istanbul and the capital Ankara. Security forces and protesters clashed for a second day, with police again using tear gas and water cannon. Almost 1,000 people were detained in more than 90 protests held around the country. Katerina Moe reports.
Public anger flared among liberal Turks, clashing with police overnight into a third day of unrest in Istanbul and the capital Ankara. Streets on fire, buildings and vehicles vandalised, it's turned into a battlefield clouded by more tear gas. The ground littered with stones, bottles and other debris used as missiles against the police. Protests have now spread to other cities, with people denouncing what they see as Prime Minister Erdogan's increasingly authoritarian style.
There have been 939 detentions in various cities. Some of them have already been released, and some of them are arrested pending trial. During these protests, 26 police officers and 53 citizens were wounded.
What started as a small demonstration against plans to redevelop a park in Istanbul's historic Taksim Square quickly turned into a nationwide anti-government protest, fueled by heavy-handed tactics by the police. The Turkish liberals feel they're being dictated to by a government that's both conservative and rooted in Islam.
Most people are dissatisfied, I guess. That's why they are here.
It's a riot against the dictatorship.
On Saturday, Prime Minister Erdogan admitted that police had used excessive force and urged for an end to the demonstrations. It's the fiercest anti-government protest he's ever had to face during his 10 years in power. But protesters don't look like they're going to give up the cause lightly, threatening his plans to stay in charge for many more years to come. Katerina Moe, BBC News.
Our correspondent James Reynolds is in Istanbul. A short while ago, he gave us an update on the protest.
Well, let's start from late last night. From late into the night, I'd say 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, we heard the clanging of pots and pans. That's a traditional way of residents of Istanbul showing their support for the protests. And the sting of tear gas reached us here in the centre of Istanbul. There'd been clashes in the neighbourhood of Beşiktaş, which is next to the Bosphorus Strait. This morning, we all woke up to steady rain. You can't see it behind me because I'm in a studio, but that rain has dampened protests for the moment. A lot of protesters who'd been essentially protesting for about 48 hours have gone home to get some rest. We've checked, and Taksim Square, the symbolic centre of the protest, is largely empty for the moment. But what we've learned in the last few days suggests that this is an afternoon and a nighttime kind of revolt, and we may expect further clashes later on in the day. But for the moment in the morning, it's quiet.
So, James, it's for those reasons that it's quiet, rather than protesters heeding the call of the Prime Minister Erdogan for them to end these demonstrations?
I think it might just be a morning thing. People were exhausted, and I think we had reports that in Ankara and Istanbul, people had continued to protest and to take over the streets till about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. At that point, clearly exhaustion set in together with the rain, I think encouraging a lot of people to go home. But certainly late at night, my colleagues saw people in streets of Istanbul who were barricading benches into the middle of the road and who were scrawling graffiti on walls and on bus shelters.
James, the Prime Minister has admitted an excessive use of force by police. How is his government going to handle this from here on end?
Essentially, he said he wanted a dialogue with the protesters, but he wasn't quite sure which people to speak to, and he encouraged what he called citizens and protesters. He made a difference in the translated remarks that I saw to behave with common sense and a sense of responsibility. We'll have to see now whether the demonstrators, once the day really begins here, whether they go back to Taksim Square, whether they make any kind of attempt to make Taksim Square their own, because the Prime Minister had ordered the police to withdraw from that symbolic centre of the protest.
That was James Reynolds speaking to me a little earlier from Istanbul. This is BBC World News. I'm Daniela Retorto. These are the latest headlines. Nearly 1,000 people have been detained following a second day of violent protests in Turkey. Well, we can get the very latest on that situation in Turkey because with me is Çağla Kasapoğlu of the BBC's Turkish service. It seems like it's been quite quiet this morning. Prime Minister Erdogan did ask everybody to end the demonstrations. What do you think's going on? Do you think people are going to heed that warning?
Yes, the police has been temporarily now pulled out from the area, and it was a decision probably taken after the violent clashes that has been taken on in the square. But we still don't know yet what we expect in the later during the day, because I'm hearing also that there is now raining, so it also sort of pulled back the protesters.
Where have these protests come from? Where has this anger come from? It started with a demonstration against development, which happens in all sorts of countries. People are upset about certain developments and parks. Why has this become a wider anti-government demonstration across the country? The main reason why it became a wider protest against the government is the use of excessive force, the heavy-handed approach of the government against to the protesters, because this was a peaceful demonstration at the beginning for the Gezi Park, the area, the last remaining green area of the largest city in Turkey. But then there was the sparking point was when the police has raided the in-seat protest at 5 a.m. So the protesters were asleep. So, and then the use of water cannon, the use of tear gas, the violent approach of the police has turned this peaceful protest into a more violent, widespread protest all around the country. People have been saying that a lot of this is against Prime Minister Erdogan's increasingly authoritarian nature. But he's won 3 elections, fairly and squarely in democratic elections. Why now do you feel that there's a turning against Prime Minister Erdogan? Or is this just very much a left-wing secular student movement?
Well, the main problem here is that he's been criticized of imposing a lifestyle to Turkish people. They are not there for their political reasons. There's not like the main opposition party is not there. There's like there's no banners, no flags of any sort of political ideas. The main reason now that they don't want to be imposed by a certain lifestyle, and some call it Islamization. So the steps that the Turkish government has followed, like the reconstruction process, the demolition of the park there is an extended version of, again, a lifestyle. Okay, so this is like, is going to become a shopping mall. This is where people make money. And this is not solely that. There were alcohol ban. There were some sayings against abortion and against even kissing in public. So now there is a growing fear that there is a certain type of lifestyle trying to be imposed on Turkish society.
Okay. Çağla Kosopoğlu from the BBC's Turkish service. We have to leave it there. Thanks a lot for your analysis.
Thank you.